Hello and welcome to Feeding Your Liver, Fueling Your Life. I'm Lorraine Stiehl, the Chief Executive Officer of the American Liver Foundation. And we are so grateful for Meijer Specialty Pharmacy for partnering with us on this very exciting program for you today. We'll be covering topics like guidelines for healthy eating, a 7-day liver healthy meal plan, and a cooking demonstration featuring a delicious, healthy, and affordable meal. Now let's begin our program. We'll start with presentations, and then we will answer your questions. Feel free to insert any questions you have into the Q&A box in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can later in the program. So let's welcome Beth Eggleston and Jodie Vander. Both Beth and Jodie are registered dietitians and serve as nutrition educational specialists at Meijer Specialty Pharmacy. So let's get started, and Beth will kick it off with some top-line information about liver disease, and then she will dive into the importance of and guidelines for healthy eating.
Thank you so very much, Lorraine. I am so glad to be here. I hope you all are having a wonderful day, and we are going to get started with our presentation. So we're going to talk a little bit about fatty liver disease, as well as fueling a healthy liver, and then talk a little bit more about additional liver diseases and different lifestyle interventions one could take to help those different liver diseases. And then we'll close out with a wonderful cooking demonstration by my friend and counterpart, Jodie Vander. So let's get going with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. First of all, this is a buildup of excess fat in the liver and has few to no symptoms, and it's not caused by excessive alcohol use. It's actually the #1 cause of liver disease across the world and the #1 cause of liver disease in children. About 24% of Americans suffer from fatty liver disease, and that equates to about 100 million people. 75% of those who are overweight also have fatty liver, and about 90% of those with severe obesity have fatty liver disease. What's important to note is fatty liver disease is a progressive type of disease and can progress into more serious issues like NASH, cirrhosis of the liver, as well as liver cancer. There are many different risk factors for fatty liver disease, and a lot of them stem from metabolic syndrome, which is a cluster of different types of conditions, including apple-shaped obesity or a large waist circumference, high blood sugar associated with diabetes, high triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, which is our good cholesterol, as well as high blood pressure. Genetics is another risk factor for fatty liver disease and has nothing to do with metabolic syndrome. And data does show that those with Hispanic or Asian backgrounds may be more predisposed to getting fatty liver disease. There are a lot of lifestyle changes that can mitigate or lower the risk of fatty liver disease. And these include things like improving diet, which we're going to spend the majority of this presentation talking about, drinking little to no alcohol, increasing physical activity, as well as controlling weight and controlling blood sugar, cholesterol, and triglycerides. Let's talk a little bit about how we can fuel a healthy liver, because diet really does matter. Nutrition plays a very key role in preventing liver diseases, as well as improving existing liver conditions. And a nutritional strategy that would be important to employ is having a plant-forward diet. This does not mean in any way, shape, or form you have to get rid of all of the animal products in your diet. This is not a vegetarian type diet. It just emphasizes plant foods. And there's a lot of different nutritional strategies that does this. My plate is one where you have half your plate covered with fruits and vegetables, a quarter of your plate with a protein food, and a quarter of your plate with a whole grain. The DASH diet is another really wonderful nutritional strategy, and this is the dietary approaches to stop hypertension. And finally, the Mediterranean diet, a really wonderful plant-forward diet that we're going to spend time talking about today. The Mediterranean diet is very high in fiber because it emphasizes fruit, vegetables, and whole grains. It also has healthy fats. So we have our nuts and our seeds that are going to be rich in healthy fats, along with things like avocado and olive oil. The Mediterranean diet also is high in protein, but more plant-based protein, and is very rich in vitamins and minerals. On the flip side, the Mediterranean diet limits things like red meat and high-fat dairy, making it lower in saturated fat. It also limits processed foods and refined grains, so that's going to bring down some of the sodium and added sugars in the diet as well. And in general, the Mediterranean diet is often lower in calories. I've been talking about eating a plant-forward diet, and one of the best ways to do that is by increasing the number of fruits and vegetables we have on our plate. 9 out of 10 Americans actually do not get the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables per day. So it's going to be important to consider all forms of fruits and vegetables and pile them on your plate. So this can be fresh, frozen, canned, dried, or 100% juice. Most people think if they need to eat healthy, they have to go to the grocery store and just fill their carts with nothing but fresh produce. And of course, that's wonderful, but that's not the case. Canned and frozen are really wonderful options and can be just as healthy and are more cost effective at times. If we are going to have dried or 100% juice for fruits and vegetables, just make sure we're looking at portion sizes. It's also going to be important to eat the rainbow, so choosing a variety of colors of fruits and vegetables, because those different colors actually represent different types of vitamins and minerals in the produce. And we want to make sure that we're trying to get enough of fruits and vegetables. For Americans or adults eating about 2,000 calories per day, the recommendation is about 2.5 cups of vegetables per day and 2 cups of fruit. Whole grains are going to be another really important piece of both the Mediterranean diet and healthy eating for our liver. We want to make sure we have 100% of the original kernel in our whole grain products. That's what makes it a whole grain product. So we have that outer bran where that fiber is. We have the germ, which is where we're going to have our healthy fats and our B vitamins. And then we have the starchy endosperm. When we have a refined grain, what is done is that bran is taken off the outside and that germ is taken off, and all that's left is that starchy endosperm. So think white flour. That's going to be a refined grain, and that's going to be turned into white bread and white crackers and white pasta. So we want to make sure we are choosing products with whole, the word whole, as the first ingredient on the ingredient list. And there's a lot of different whole grains out there. Whole wheat, brown rice, oats, barley, bulgur, cornmeal, whole wheat pasta, whole wheat breads, as well as popcorn is a whole grain as well. Protein is going to be another very important part of the Mediterranean diet, but the sources of protein may be different than the standard American diet. For example, seafood is going to be a really important part of the Mediterranean diet, and eating fish or shellfish 2 or more times a week may be protective against fatty liver disease. We also want to make sure we're eating plant-based proteins because they are both low in fat and high in fiber. And some examples of these include things like beans, peas, lentils, and nuts. Poultry is also going to be a great lean protein source, so we just need to make sure we're cognizant about how we're preparing it. So grilling, baking, broiling, all of those are healthy preparation methods, whereas frying might not be our best choice. Eggs and low-fat dairy are also great sources of protein for the Mediterranean diet. We do want to make sure we're limiting our red meat to less than 2 times a week and avoiding high-fat processed meats as well, like bologna, salami, prosciutto, those types of cured meats, as well as deli meat. The Mediterranean diet isn't necessarily a very low-fat diet, but the type of fats that we have in the Mediterranean diet are very special. They're going to be the ones you see on the right-hand side here in blue. So those are going to be our monounsaturated fats and our omega-3 fatty acids, which are found under the polyunsaturated fat umbrella. Monounsaturated fats include things like olive oil and olives, avocados, nuts, and nut butters, while omega-3 fatty acids include our smash fish. And I just talked about how important fish and seafood is. And our smash fish are going to be our cold water fatty fish, like salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. That's where that SMASH acronym comes in. Walnuts, fish oil, flaxseed, and chia seeds are also really good sources of polyunsaturated fats. The fats that we want to limit or have a little bit less of in our diet include our saturated fats, and one can think about this as our four-legged fat. So they come from animals with four legs. So beef and pork and a lot of their products like full-fat dairy products, bacon, sausage, etc. Butter is another high source of saturated fat, as well as tropical oils like palm oil and palm kernel oil. Trans fat is another type of fat we want to limit, and this is naturally found in some animal foods. So if we're eating more plant-based protein sources, we're not going to get nearly as much of this. And it's also found in partially hydrogenated oils. But as of 2018, partially hydrogenated oils are not permitted in our food supply, and so trans fats have really come down in the American diet. Sugar is another really important piece of the fatty liver puzzle because a lot of people don't think about it. However, the average American eats about 17 teaspoons of added sugar per day, mostly from sugar-sweetened beverages like soda, energy drinks, full-fat, high-sugar coffee drinks, etc. I want to take you on a very quick chemistry lesson here so you can learn why sugar is important when it comes to fatty liver disease. Sucrose, which is table sugar or the white sugar you would put in your coffee in the morning, is actually broken down into two monosaccharides: glucose, which is what your body wants to use as fuel, as well as fructose. And fructose is special because it has to first go to the liver to be processed. And it goes to the liver and gets converted to glucose so it can be used as fuel in the body. However, when we have a lot of sugar, when we have a lot of fructose coming in, particularly from high fructose corn syrup, our liver can't handle all of that fructose, and in turn, it gets turned to glucose, and if it's not able to be burned or used in the body, it gets turned into fat, which is stored in the liver, which can worsen fatty liver disease. That's why it's so important to be aware of the amount of sugar that we're eating. And one way to do that is by looking at the food label. There is a line on the food label that has added sugars on it, and we can look at that and look at the number of grams of added sugar. I don't know about you, but I do not necessarily think of grams. I think in teaspoons and tablespoons and cups. So what I can do is look at those grams of added sugar and divide it by 4. And that will give me the number of teaspoons in that particular product. For example, here we have 23 grams divided by 4 equals 5.75 teaspoons. Therefore, we know how many teaspoons and we can visualize that, but also that's a lot of sugar. The American Heart Association recommends that men get no more than 9 teaspoons of added sugar per day, and women get no more than 6 teaspoons of added sugar per day. Another rule of thumb is to look at the percent daily value on the right-hand side there. And if something is less than 5%, that is considered low in. And if something is greater than 20%, that is considered high in. So look for products that are low in added sugar. Salt is another piece of the puzzle, just because salt relates back to high blood pressure, and that is a risk factor for fatty liver disease. So we do want to try to cut back on our processed foods because about 70% of the sodium that we get in our diet comes from processed foods like crackers and cheese and canned foods and restaurant meals. So if we're able to eat fresher, more foods from scratch, we're not going to be getting in as much sodium. We also want to try to eat smaller portions of our salty foods because sometimes we just need a few chips, and that's okay. All foods count. But if we can pre-portion our salty foods and just eat that, that's going to be beneficial. We can also explore other flavors and try to flavor our foods with things like spices and herbs or citrus, because citrus actually it activates the same flavor sensors as salt does. And we also want to cook at home because when we cook at home, we have a lot more control about what we're making, how we're preparing foods, and how much salt is added to foods. Now the best and most exciting part of the presentation, coffee. I am a coffee lover, and I am so happy to report that the recommendation for coffee for those with liver disease is about 3 cups a day, because coffee may actually help to slow liver disease and reduce liver scarring. It's best to choose black coffee that is drip filtered and caffeinated, and also okay to add some low-fat dairy or choose decaffeinated coffee, but we really want to make sure we're skipping high sugar, high fat specialty coffee drinks. The mechanism of action or how it works in the body isn't quite known, but researchers think it has something to do with the caffeine or the antioxidants like polyphenols, vitamin E, and chlorogenic acid. Additionally, for those with liver disease, it's going to be important to drink water or tea as well. And then we really do want to make sure we're drinking alcohol sparingly. Now, there are some additional liver diseases I want to quickly touch on, and that includes our stages of liver disease. So we have the more progressive form of fatty liver disease, which is NASH, and this is inflammation of the liver. There are often no symptoms, and if fatty liver disease gets to this stage of NASH, it is generally reversible. Fibrosis is the next stage, and this is where the liver is becoming scarred. It can restrict blood flow, and often in this stage, there are no symptoms as well. Cirrhosis is severe scarring of the liver. And then when it gets to this point, this is an irreversible point. And there is also symptoms associated with this, including pain and fatigue, appetite loss, fluid retention, jaundice, and itchiness around the liver. And people with cirrhosis are more susceptible to liver cancer. And finally, there's liver failure. And this is where the liver stops functioning altogether. The only treatment for this is a liver transplant, and it could be acute based on a drug overdose or toxicity, or it could be chronic, happening gradually over many, many years. With some of these stages, such as cirrhosis, lifestyle interventions do come into play. For example, with cirrhosis, it's going to be very important to meet your protein and calorie needs because they are elevated with cirrhosis of the liver. And this has to be very individualized, so I do recommend talking to a registered dietitian or your physician about the amounts that are right for you. Because appetite loss is a big piece of cirrhosis, it's going to be important to eat regularly to make sure you're getting all those calories and protein you need. So try to eat as soon as you get up, eat every 1 to 2 hours throughout the day, and make sure you're eating a snack before bed as well. Limiting sodium is also going to be important because you want to limit high blood pressure and you do not want fluid retention. So trying to get around 2,000 milligrams or less per day is going to be important. And then, of course, you want to avoid raw fish and shellfish because those with cirrhosis are more susceptible to a foodborne illness called Vibrio, and that can be very dangerous. We also do want to limit alcohol here as well. Hepatitis is another liver condition. It's the inflammation of the liver due to alcohol use, toxic material, or viral infection. I want to focus in on hepatitis C at the moment. And with hepatitis C, this is caused by getting into contact with the secretions or blood of an infected individual. But if someone does contract hepatitis C, it's going to be important to eat small, healthy meals that are nutrient dense. We do want to encourage coffee consumption, and again, avoiding raw fish and shellfish as well as alcohol. We also want to limit iron consumption because that can overtax the liver as well. So avoiding cooking in cast iron pots and pans and avoiding really high iron foods like mussels and oysters and beef and pork, as well as the food product of liver. And then with dietary supplements, a multivitamin may be necessary, but again, talk to your physician. It's also going to be important to talk to your physician about any type of supplements that you may be taking, including milk thistle. There's limited research on milk thistle, and some of the methodology of the research projects are a little weak. So there hasn't been very many effective treatments for hepatitis C, including milk thistle. So perhaps leave that out of the diet. And finally, watch salt intake because that can cause further liver damage due to what it can do to blood pressure. With that, I want to hand it over to my colleague and friend, registered dietitian Jodie Vander for a delicious cooking demonstration.
Thank you, Beth. That nutrition information was wonderful and will go great with the cooking demonstration that we will have today. So today we're going to be making a mustard and brown sugar glazed salmon. This is going to fit into all three of those diets that Beth talked about, the DASH, the Mediterranean, and the My Plate method. So I'm really excited to share this recipe with you. One of my favorite things about this mustard and brown sugar glazed salmon is that it only is 5 ingredients. So it's very quick, it's efficient. You can be sitting down at your table in about 15 minutes. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna start with preheating the oven to 425. I've already had mine going. And then what we'll wanna do next, I'm gonna turn my camera towards the food, is get the salmon going. So I have 4 fillets here of salmon, and I've made these aluminum foil boats for them to go on and put them on a baking sheet. So I'm going to set those aside while we mix up the glaze. So here's our glaze. We're going to start with 3 tablespoons of Dijon stone ground mustard. This gives it kind of a good crunch, but you also can use just plain Dijon mustard if you like, if you have that at home. Then we'll add in our minced garlic. This is just 1 teaspoon. Garlic has so many anti-inflammatory properties and is really great for immune function, liver function, and it's a great way to add flavor to foods. We have 2 tablespoons of brown sugar to give this a little bit of sweetness. And then finally, we have 1 teaspoon of garlic or ginger paste, excuse me. And we will mix this up. And one thing I want to touch on here is I'm using salmon, but if you want to use something plant-based, you could do this recipe on tofu. You could use frozen fish that is sometimes more budget friendly. Chicken would be another great option. The one thing with using chicken, you just want to make sure that it reaches that internal temperature of 165 degrees for food safety. And then we are going to put this glaze on the salmon. This recipe can be found on Meijer Specialty Pharmacy website. We have tons of great resources there and wonderful recipes that all have been tested by dietitians. And one thing that you'll notice on some of the recipes is that they have red font. That red font calls out food safety tips. And it's been shown that people are more likely to follow those food safety tips is if it's called out within a recipe. You'll also notice that we have nourishment notes, and that tells you why a food is so healthful to the body. And then there's also some good cooking tips, like if you want to buy pre-minced garlic, which I did here for this recipe today, instead of having to peel the garlic, using the garlic press, or dicing it or chopping it, just makes things easier in the kitchen. So we're getting this evenly spread over our salmon here. Smells great. And then we will get this popped into the oven. So I'm going to stick this in the oven real quick. And then just like that, cooking magic, right? We have our mustard and brown sugar glazed salmon, and this is absolutely delicious. There's so many good omega-3s in the salmon here, which is great for inflammation. It's great for antioxidants within the body. And another tip too is if you don't enjoy fish or you don't like salmon that has those omega-3s in it, walnuts are another great source, like Beth said, of omega-3s, and a good way to incorporate those. Serving size is just a handful, so that's not a whole lot of walnuts to eat either. So these are great options to get some of those omega-3s in the body. And that is all I have for our cooking demo today. I'll pass it over to Lorraine.
Thank you so much, Jodie, for this very helpful and very easy cooking demonstration. I'm going to make that for dinner tonight. And thank you so much, Beth, for your great guidelines on healthy eating. I always learn from you. So I now like to open it up to Q&A. And I see we have quite a few questions in the chat already. So let me lead with Beth. Beth, what are the risks of losing weight too fast or losing weight too fast?
That's an excellent question, Lorraine. I'm glad that it was asked. First and foremost, when we lose weight too quickly, one thing I worry about is the sustainability. People tend to lose weight and then it can come right back. So that's going to be a big piece of it. But I also would worry about risk of malnutrition. We want to make sure people are eating enough calories, especially if they have something like cirrhosis of the liver, and also making sure that they're getting enough protein. Dehydration can also be an issue with losing weight too fast, as well as gallstones, and not to mention some of the less serious side effects of losing weight too quickly or just losing weight, which is irritability, headaches, fatigue, and sometimes muscle loss.
And another question for you, Beth. What is the risk of fasting in general for NASH-based cirrhosis?
That is another great question and kind of goes in hand with the former question. But when someone has cirrhosis, their appetite is going to be low to begin with. So if they're fasting, maybe they're trying intermittent fasting, they're wanting to lose weight, it's not necessarily a good idea because your protein and calorie needs with cirrhosis are going to be higher than normal. And if you are limiting the amount of time that you're eating, it is going to be very, very difficult to get that amount of calories and protein into your diet. And a lot of people with NASH-based cirrhosis may also have diabetes. So fasting with diabetes isn't recommended, especially if you're on medication, because it could cause low blood sugar issues.
Thank you so much for that answer. And now, Jodie, this is a question that's asked a lot on our helpline. Is it safe for people with NAFL to use stevia sweetener?
Yes, great question. Thanks, Lorraine. So research has shown that stevia is a safe alternative to regular table sugar. However, we always want to recommend that people use artificial sweeteners in moderation and always to consult our physician when we are adding artificial sweeteners. So it's something you shouldn't rely on 100% within your diet, but definitely is safe in moderation.
And again, somebody's questioning the coffee, the news that we just learned from Beth on coffee. It's true that 2 to 3 cups of coffee or green tea are good for liver health, right?
This is true. So like Beth said, the research and many studies have shown that, up to 3 cups of coffee or tea a day could have some really positive impacts on liver disease. So it's been shown it can lower your liver enzymes, which helps with inflammation within the body. So again, all of these are great, or coffee and tea are great options to be drinking, but we just need to remember that they need to be black, no sweetened beverage added to it.
Absolutely. My liver must be very healthy. Beth, in the interest of improving the environment, I've been thinking of adding more soy products, but I hear that soy is bad for the liver. Are soy products okay for me? That's one of the questions.
Question too. I know there's a lot of conflicting information coming out about soy, but I would say soy is a helpful, high protein addition to the diet. It's also a wonderful plant-based protein as well. And so we learned about those plant-based proteins earlier and why they are beneficial. Low fat, high in fiber. Studies have also shown that soy can help to alleviate insulin resistance in those with fatty liver disease. So that's going to be really important. And they may have a positive effect on certain liver enzymes. It can help with body weight and markers for oxidative stress. So I would say get that tofu in your diet, try the soy.
Sounds good. And here's a question about fruit. Are dried fruits as good as raw fruits for liver failure patients?
Well, all fruits count. As I said in my presentation, it is going to be important to get fruit into your diet. But if I had to choose one of the or the other for a liver failure patient, I would certainly choose a whole raw fruit, just because couple of reasons. One, it's pretty easy to overeat dried fruit because they're so small and snackable. And a serving of dried fruit is relatively small, only about 1/4 cup. And a lot of dried fruits do have added sugar on them. So if you're wanting to eat dried fruit, look for products that do not have any added sugars to them. And also raw fruits still have the water in them because the dried fruits have been dehydrated, and that water in a whole raw fruit is actually going to make you fuller, longer, and that's going to be important too.
Terrific. So, Jodie, here's a question for you. Is there a way to clean my liver or flush out the toxins or gunk from it?
I love this question. So actually, the liver is the organ in the body that actually filters out all of our toxins. So it doesn't really necessarily need its own cleanse or own detox. So many of the supplements that actually are out on the market for liver detoxes, they're not FDA regulated, so they may contain ingredients that aren't safe and could be potentially harmful for the liver. So, just doing your own natural thing, eating well, drinking water, getting your coffee in, it's a good enough detox for your liver.
Okay, I think we have time for a few more questions. Beth, is there any supplement that has a proven track record of improving liver function, such as milk thistle, turmeric, or collagen?
First and foremost, I would never start taking a supplement for liver health before you consult with your doctor. That's going to be so very important. Milk thistle, as I mentioned when I was talking about hepatitis C, is probably the most popular supplement when it comes to liver health. But as I mentioned, research is mixed on the supplement because of weak methodology in some of the research. Milk thistle has been shown to be one of the safer options with limited side effects, but again, important to talk to your doctor. Turmeric and collagen, I would say avoid. Turmeric, I was looking up a couple things of when I was creating this presentation, and I saw that can cause liver injury, so definitely stay away from high levels of turmeric. But the bottom line is nutrition supplements may cause more harm than good, so make sure you're talking to your doctor as well as eating a very healthy diet and avoiding alcohol.
Another question for you, Beth. Is a keto diet okay for the liver?
Good question. Keto is very popular these days. Jodie and I know we're always hearing about keto diet, people who are on keto diet. And what it is, it's a really high fat, low carbohydrate diet with moderate protein levels. And a lot of people go on to it because it does result in weight loss. People do find they are successful with weight loss with keto diet. However, there are some potential risks, including increasing LDL cholesterol, triglycerides, and liver enzymes. So one way, if you are going to go on the keto diet to mitigate these effects, is getting the fat that you're taking in from more plant-based sources like olive oil and avocados. However, the keto diet eliminates a lot of really, really healthy foods from our diet, like whole grains and fruits and non-starchy vegetables. And starchy vegetables. You can have non-starchy vegetables. So really, it's going to be difficult to maintain long-term. And if you do want to try the keto diet, it is going to be very, very important that you work with your healthcare team, and so they know what you're doing as well.
Okay, thank you, Beth. That's helpful. And Jodie, is it okay to eat almonds if you have fatty liver?
Absolutely. Nuts, especially almonds, are good sources of vitamin E, and this is a nutrient that may protect against fatty liver disease. Almonds are also very healthy for your heart, so make sure we're grabbing a handful. That's the portion size for nuts when you're looking for a good snack.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Jodie, how does our listener know how much protein is good or bad?
Yeah, so I think, like Beth said, always talking to a registered dietitian to see what's going to be best for you, and getting that one-on-one personal attention and personalization based on what's going on with you. But some good general recommendations is I really like to use the My Plate method and including some source of protein at every single meal. So when we use that My Plate method, a quarter of your plate is being protein. And we want to make sure that we're focusing on healthy proteins like fish, chicken, turkey, beans. So some of those leaner proteins, and really try to make sure that you're eating it throughout the day and not doing large servings at one meal.
Okay. Okay, well, I think that concludes our Q&A, and we've reached the end of our time together, unfortunately. Everyone who registered today will receive a follow-up email with a free 7-day healthy liver meal plan. How great is that? And if you have any additional questions about Meijer Specialty Pharmacy, please visit their website. You see it up on screen, MeijerSpecialtyPharmacy.com. And if you have more questions about liver disease, the American Liver Foundation can help. Call our helpline, 1-800-GO-LIVER, or chat with us at liverfoundation.org. And we have trained specialists available to help you Monday through Friday, and lots of free resources at liverfoundation.org. So thank you so very much for spending this time with us.